Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone enjoyed their breakfast. I'm Frank Gilliam, Mayor of the City of Atlantic City, and welcome to the Governor's Conference of Housing and Development. This gives us a great opportunity for the City of Atlantic City to host this conference. There's a lot of great things happening in our city, and it's a lot to do with the partnership that we have with the state of New Jersey. It's also important for us to take advantage of times like this because we don't have the chance to have these type of brains in one room at one time to figure out how we can improve cities and communities like Atlantic City. I'm very excited to mention the panel that we have before you. We're looking forward to a great two-day conference. Anything that the City of Atlantic City can do to make this a memorable one, we're open to actually any ideas and concepts that we can move forward to have this conference become better. Without any further ado, because I know you guys don't want to hear from me, you want to hear from these distinguished panelists. I would like to turn it over now to the panelists. And again, welcome to the City of Atlantic City, and God bless you all. Thank you.
So thank you all for being here this morning. I am so excited to moderate this panel with, I think, the best and smartest and most committed folks we could have on this topic. So last year when we were all here, Governor Murphy talked about a stronger and fair New Jersey and how we were going to get there. And here are some of the leading folks on the private side, the public sector side, and the not-for-profit side. So I think these folks need no introduction, but let's just go down the line quickly and introduce ourselves. I'll start with you, Ty.
So Ty Cooper at NJEDA.
I'm Maurice Jones with LISC.
Sheila Oliver, Commissioner of the Department of Community Affairs and Lieutenant Governor.
Chuck Richmond, the Executive Director of the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency.
Good morning. I'm Leslie Anderson, and I'm with the New Jersey Redevelopment Authority.
Fantastic. And I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Margaret Anado. I run the Urban Investment Group at Goldman Sachs. So thank you. So let's dive right in. So first we want to start off with, in the last year and quite frankly in your organization's history, what are some of the things that you're doing to create that fairer and stronger New Jersey? And I think, Maurice, we'll start with you.
All right. Well, good morning. It's nice to be with everyone. We embrace the governor's vision for a stronger and healthier and more inclusive New Jersey. And we have a LISC office in Newark. And I'll tell you about three things that we're trying to do based in that office, and hopefully will spread further in New Jersey. First, we have a principle, or I should say a strategy around talent development that we call financial opportunity centers. Very, very briefly, what financial opportunity centers do is they provide, through a coaching model, financial literacy coaching, case management around transportation, childcare, housing, and they help folks get into jobs, the hard and soft skills around jobs. And if you look at the work that we are doing in those three financial opportunity centers, you'll see the following. Over 600 people have been placed in jobs, with the average income being $15.50 per hour placed into jobs. About another 600 or so have actually increased their net income, and about 250 of these clients have actually reduced debts and through long-term savings have been contributing to their net worth. And then almost 200 of the clients coming through these three financial opportunity centers have increased their credit scores by 44 points. Right, so that's the kind of investment we're doing through these financial opportunity centers, which are applicable all over the state of New Jersey. We're in Newark now, but we look forward to expanding, and I know you all are going to now hold me to that.
Absolutely.
I know I got to be careful what I say here, but so that's one area. Another piece of our work regards basically helping folks or residents in communities become empowered to try to catalyze investment, more investment in their communities. And this really is about training residents on how to mobilize resources. We have a 6-month training that 100 residents already have gone through in Newark. And then we have another 1-day training where 130 plus residents have been involved. And then lastly, and this is the crescendo, what we're known mostly for is investing capital and leveraging that capital to communities. And LISC, in its time in New Jersey, has invested $329 million across the state.
Excellent.
You can definitely clap for that. Where is the love in this audience?
And Maurice, before we leave you, because I think you obviously bring a national perspective to this panel. Clearly, LISC is doing great work in communities all around the country. What is your work around the country doing to inform what you're doing in New Jersey, and I guess vice versa? What are the lessons and innovations you're really pushing forward on the ground in New Jersey that you're able to leverage in other parts of the country?
Look, I think what we're seeing, and listen, honestly, the rest of the country has a lot to learn from New Jersey and vice versa, so I want to say that. But I think what we're seeing is that if you really want to catalyze resilient, inclusive communities of opportunity, you have to simultaneously be investing in people, helping people get on pathways to livable wage jobs. You have to be investing in places, the places where people live and play and go to school and raise families. You've got to invest in the housing, you've got to invest in the community facilities, you've got to have recreation fields, et cetera. So you got to invest in place. You also need to invest in healthy enterprises, nonprofit and for-profit. You need both to make a community resilient and growing. And then lastly, and this is the biggest, all right, you've got to fix systems, public sector systems and private sector systems, so they work better for all people. If you want broadly shared prosperity, systems change has to be a piece of it. Absolutely. We're seeing that in every place we work, urban and rural, as well as here in the great state of New Jersey. And so we are hoping to find partners to do that work here as well as elsewhere.
Fantastic. So I want to move to you, Lieutenant Governor. You have clearly been a driving force in the state's agenda and really pushing forward these topics that we all care about to the real top of the priority list. From your seat, really looking across the state, right, right in the sort of core of the governor's efforts, what's the innovation you're trying to see? What are you trying to push out? What do you want the for-profit sector to be doing, the not-for-profit sector, and all the agencies that, of course, you have oversight of?
Oh, well, thank you, Margaret. For the past 20 months that I've been the commissioner at DCA, but who's counting? But it has been 20 months. One of the first things that I began to engage in with the staff, and we have a wonderful staff. We have a seasoned staff. We've got a veteran group of people working within all of our divisions who really, for several years, did not have the opportunity to really utilize the talents that they had. And I like the fact that Maurice made reference to their focusing on talent development. So at DCA, one of the first things we prioritized was we had to improve technology within the department. And you know that we're responsible for reviewing the budgets of all 565 municipalities. Those municipalities that receive special aid from us, we give another level of technical support. And under Chuck's tenure, during his time as commissioner, we developed something called the FAST system. We are now able to allow municipalities to electronically remit financial data to us. This is going to improve our analytics and our data mining. And that is going to help us make decisions about policy based on actual data.
In real time.
Yes, in real time. So, that's one of the things that we focused on. The other thing that I experienced coming in on the administrative side, coming from the legislature, is how all of the state agencies and departments seemingly operated in silos. Yeah. They didn't talk to each other. They didn't have relationship with each other. Maurice, they did not leverage the assets and resources each individual department had. So we are changing the paradigm in terms of if EDA is engaged in a project, what can DCA do to enhance and further refine that initiative? What can Chuck bring to the table? What can Leslie bring to the table? So it's going to enable us to work more interdepartmentally to bring resources and assets to initiatives. And then I think that for a very long time in New Jersey, our focus was always on the large, challenging communities, which we very well should have. That is why DCA was created. But I think it's time for us to understand if we go from one end of our state to the other, there is poverty everywhere. There is disinvestment everywhere. We have a lot of older industrial cities in our state. We have to rethink what those commercial corridors in those communities can be. And we have to understand that we're going to experience generational shift, which I'm sure we're going to talk about this morning, because it has a lot of implication for housing that we create, for commercial development, for retail, that sort of thing. And so we're engaging in that type of work at the department. You also know that we're going to spend some time talking about opportunity zones, and I will tell you what we have done. And then I have a wonderful young man in our department. I call him my brainiac. He developed the most phenomenal layered system. Is Chris Wheeler here?
Right there.
Yes. And we are now able to help municipalities up their game with the use of technology by defining neighborhoods. We're now able to target where properties are. And that's the other thing that Chris and others in the department have invested time in, Sean Thompson and others. We now can offer developers, mayors, local real estate investors, we can now give them real-time data in terms of neighborhoods that are ripe for development. So I think that what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is that we're no longer making knee-jerk decisions about how we award contracts and where we invest money. We're doing it based on data and data-driven. And we think that if we utilize data, not emotionality, not politicism, but if we really target our resources and our assets where an investment will yield a different quality of life for people in New Jersey, then we think that we're contributing to the governor's objective in terms of creating a stronger and a fairer New Jersey.
And Chuck, it's, obviously there is no community or economic development without a focus on strong housing, affordable housing, quality housing. New Jersey is clearly a state with many different types of neighborhoods, living styles. The Lieutenant Governor talked about the large cities and everything in between. How do you think about innovation from a housing perspective and how that moves us forward in terms of being stronger and fair?
Sure. Thank you, Margaret. What we've attempted to do in those 20 months that the new administration has taken over, is to incentivize the private sector as best we can to develop housing where children have a better opportunity in schools, where transportation is better related to where the developments are taking place, where jobs are available. And we've done that through changes to the qualified allocation plan, as well as we've done that through how we allocate other tax credit initiatives. Now, since the governor has taken office, we've either through tax credits or other financing provided the beginning for another 5,100 units of affordable housing and another 400 market rate. And we just this past week had applications due for the second round since the governor took over on the allocation plan. 42 projects came in. 3 or 4 mixed income projects, which we've prioritized. Something that you rarely saw in the past in our urban areas. Too hard to do, too tough.
Complicated.
But when you create an incentive, and let's be honest, when you create a plan that will fund it and fund it with a healthy amount of subsidy, it works. The applications for affordable housing, probably driven by what's happening in the courts, we're seeing communities applying that have never applied before. And so in our suburban areas that have a better school system and we're seeing those applications. It's a wonderful asset. And I expect that with these changes, development takes time. And so you'll see over time more and more applications for the mixed income, more and more applications in the better schools, more and more applications associated with transit. We've also greatly expanded the agency's ability to provide first-time home buyer mortgages. 4 years ago, I guess, during the tail end of the recession, HMFA couldn't get into the marketplace, couldn't sell bonds. The number of mortgages we provided were in the hundreds. This year, our target is 2,000. It's our average buyer, the head of household has an income of $65,000. Credit scores down to 620. The homes being purchased have mortgages in the area of a little under $200,000. It's the starter house. But it's all over the state, and it's working extremely well. We're hitting a market that really is helping make the economy fair in New Jersey. And that's 2 of the initiatives that we have underway that I think clearly help propel the governor's initiative forward.
And one of the things that's exciting with to the Lieutenant Governor's comments about technology, now with a lot of those changes going from 500 to 2,000 and really reinvesting in home ownership, you'll have the data to really see what the impact is of all those initiatives. So, Ty, I'll move to you. You're the policy guru in the state. Obviously, have had a lot of important roles that relate to this work. How do you see the policy really translating into execution on the ground? So lots of great ideas, lots of energy in this room. How are you seeing the agencies and entities really push that forward into motion?
Right, so it's actually really exciting, and I think the Lieutenant Governor hit on it so key. The fact that we're all sitting up here, all these different agencies that are working with such symmetry, I think is amazing. And I think because we've opened up the doors to everything that we're doing, it makes it so much more impactful. And for EDA specifically, as we lean into the governor and the lieutenant governor's priorities on creating a stronger and fairer New Jersey, Maurice said it first, investing in people, investing in communities for us, making it easier to do business with the state, which we should be so excited about because I don't know how often that happens, so that can get its own little round of applause, but also making us, again, the state of innovation. And so what that looks like for EDA is creating an office of economic transformation, creating a policy shop, and for the first time at EDA, having an economist who's embedded in everything that we're doing, which is truly exciting. Also, we created the Office of Small Businesses, which Cristina Fuentes should be here, who is doing a dynamic job, really touching communities where they need, helping these businesses along the way, which is incredibly exciting. And even though he's not here today, Wes Matthews and Tim Sullivan, who is our CEO of NJEDA, give greetings from India. So as we have this new Office of International Trade and Investment, they right now are putting their boots on the ground, doing that work overseas. So incredibly exciting. And I think for EDA, as we lean into not just in word, but also in deed, into what it means to invest in people, invest in communities, putting people out in these areas is incredibly important for us. So glad to be part of this initiative, but recognizing that it's part of the whole, part of this entire team that we have here. And again, I'm going to reference the LG saying that we're working together. One of the things that we're doing with DCA specifically is looking at where we're putting all of our resources into different communities, to making sure that we're not just putting money into random communities, but that we're doing it in line and very mission oriented to what DCA is doing as well. So these are a few of the steps we're taking that have completely pivoted the work that we're doing. And then I have to just give also Brian Sabina a shout out. They launched the Offshore Wind Registry, and as of today, we have 400 companies that have registered. So these are some of the innovative things that we're doing out of EDA that are really game changing.
Awesome. And Leslie, you are a clear OG in community development.
Just call me an OG. Wow.
So, everyone's excited about some of the new initiatives, really collaborating, working together. I know that one of the things you've done in your tenure has sort of been that almost just hand-to-hand combat, really pulling all the entities together, making deals work. What are you most excited about right now? What's some real change you see relative to 10 years ago, 15 years ago in your work?
I love that question. And I'm not being patronizing, but I'm excited about the lieutenant governor.
Yeah.
Right? So we could talk about programs forever, but if we don't have leadership, and we don't have the leadership, not that forces us, but helps us to see the importance of leveraging relationships. Yeah. Money is important, and I know we're recording right now, but I feel very comfortable saying this. In my tenure in government, we've had a lot of money. We've had enough money that could solve every problem in New Jersey. And sometimes we have to wonder why it wasn't solved. A part of it is leadership, yeah, and the direction to say to us, come together and work together. In our titles, we have authority, and we have power, and we have position. But if we don't use that to influence and to bring the private sector together, then it doesn't matter. And that's what's important. And for the Redevelopment Authority, and I'm kind of glad, I'm not sure about the OG thing. Feeling kind of funny about getting older, but I will say that what we've done for the last 20 plus years is to be there first. Yeah. We've gone into places that no one wanted to go. We've done projects. I'll talk about one right now. We built an Ihop in Paterson. Everybody said it's not going to work. And it's working.
And I think the entrepreneur is here.
Is she
I know
here?
She's speaking later today.
But it works. And it's the ability not to fit the project to our money, but to fit our money to the project. And that's what's critical, and that's the relationship. The other piece of what we did very early on, we understood that people didn't understand. They didn't understand the redevelopment process. They didn't understand project finance. One of my best friends is a tax assessor, and she would be in redevelopment meetings talking about pilots, and she didn't understand what redevelopment was. So we started training tax assessors on what it meant when a developer comes to your community and why they need the pilot. And we turned the tax assessors into advocates. That's that priming of the pump. That's that initial catalyst that we lay the groundwork, and we also have resources behind it. But that's critical because there's some places, whether we like it or not in New Jersey, to the Lieutenant Governor's point, that don't get attention. If you're not one of those big 8 cities, sometimes you don't get that attention. But there's East Orange, there's Burlington, there's Willingboro, there's Bridgeton. I know Mayor Kelly is here. I've been his friend since before he was the mayor. But Bridgeton is a great city, and it needs some investment. And sometimes, Margaret, your group doesn't know Bridgeton, but I'll sure tell you about it.
We'll be there soon.
And I'll get you there, right? I know you will, because we got a great project in Bridgeton.
Okay, so it's all of these comments have really threaded, obviously, the focus on communities, jobs, fairness, right? It's not about, municipalities aren't random entities. They're full of people, citizens. What can we do to make sure those people, individuals, families are actually engaged in this process, have a seat at the table, are part of their go-forward destiny? I'll start with you, Maurice.
Well, community participation is key, and there are a lot of ways to do it. I mentioned, for example, the resident trainings that we do. I think what you have to make sure of is that as you are rolling out initiatives or you're contemplating initiatives in communities, that you make as part of your way of doing business, so to speak, community participation. And there are a number of ways you can do it, whether it's through committees or meetings or bringing people onto the decision-making bodies. Whatever you decide, you need to do it, and you need to do it consistently, and it needs to be listening and learning and empowering. And if you're not doing that, it is difficult to really have all the information you need to make smart decisions.
Chuck, what does that look like for you in terms of housing? You're running significant application processes. You just alluded to the 42 projects that came in for tax credit awards. How are you making sure those application processes and what's coming in, and you have visibility into what the community's view is of those developments?
So let me talk about an example, and it's our hospital program, where we're working with the state's hospitals to build affordable housing. And I think we have begun a process where we're going to see a significant participation and capital being supplied by hospitals, private capital effectively coming in. But we've built that program around some of the discussion that Maurice just talked about. The hospital and the affordable housing extending the hospital's footprint. And we're insisting that, and the hospitals agreed readily, that on the first floor of any of these buildings, that there are services that be provided not just for the tenants that are going to be living in these developments, but for their neighborhood. And that the neighborhood will be participating and is participating. We've also quickly recognized that simply building a new 80-unit affordable housing project with either community rooms or we hope healthcare facilities on the first floor is nice, but it doesn't necessarily do enough and won't do enough for the surrounding community. So an aspect of that program is to find a nonprofit that operates in that neighborhood, and we will provide funding for that nonprofit to work within that community on health-related, but also health-related that has something to do with the housing. So, where you have mold, we're going to help remediate it. Where children have asthma and water leaks, we're going to help in that community help rebuild it. But build in the community based upon what the community believes is necessary to help them. Now, I've told this story early on in my career when we were doing some work in Elizabeth, and we had these wonderful, grandiose plans. And I went out one day and knocked on doors about our plans, and an elderly woman met me there, and she said, "Sonny, I don't care about your plans. I need to have the rats taken out of my house."
Yeah, I've had that experience as well.
I've not lost that discussion in my memory. It's important to, when you build any of these programs, you build it around the needs of the communities, and that's what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. And Leslie, you brought up sort of some of the communities who, you said it yourself, if they're not part of that big eight, maybe they're not even being heard. If you're a, individual in one of those communities, you're not the ones on the news, you're not the ones with the big projects being planned. How do you get in the mix? How do you get yourself heard? How do you get on the radar?
One, I think it starts with leadership, right? So the individual that lives in the community may not be able to get the recognition, but I will say that there's some folks around the state that have come to conferences like this and stopped us before we were able to get out of the room and said, "You need to come to my town." And we have, and I did mention Mayor Kelly. I know he's over there somewhere. When I met him, he was the head of Gateway. It's called Gateway now, but he was the head of a nonprofit. And that's how I met him. And that's how I became introduced to Bridgeton. I am going to do a ridiculous plug for our training institute. That's the other way to do it. We have these classes. Visit our website. Take these classes because we educate you on how to get your voice heard. And I'm going to keep it real. Sometimes you're not heard, right? But it also starts local. We know this. I'm going to go right. Maybe Maurice doesn't know this, but from Ty, we know this. Home rule. It's local. We can't go into the community and tell your mayor or your elected leaderships that the community should be at the table, but that's where it starts. So we keep our ear to the ground, and if we hear that the project we're going to finance didn't make it through the planning board, hello, you have a problem. If there wasn't a quorum at the planning meeting, we know what that means. We know that there's not support for the project. And I would encourage local leadership. We're living in a different time. I talked about social media earlier. There was a point in time where you could push a project through and nobody knew about it. That's over.
Yeah.
You have to, at the local level, engage your community. And what you also have to know is what it is that you want, because no matter how much money we have and no matter how good we are, we can't tell you what's best for your community. You know that, and you have to spend the time up front before you apply for the tax credits to know exactly what it is that you want. Before you apply for our site acquisition money, you have to know what it is that you want, because we're not in the position to tell you that. And I will be probably politically incorrect for the mayors in the room. Engage your community. Don't get elected and feel like they support my mandate full stop. No, they don't. They supported you to be the leader at the time, but you have to stay engaged with that community. And people need a voice because they're going to speak out one way or the other. They're going to speak out in support, or they're going to show up outside with signs. I just can't resist saying this, and I'm sorry, I might be politically incorrect again. Look what happened with Amazon. In New York, that was a clear example of not talking to the community. And what the power did was to say, we're not going to be here. We're going to move someplace else. But that was solved by 5 community meetings. Yeah. This is what we're going to do. This is how it's going to benefit you. This is why Amazon should be here. This is why we're giving them incentives. This is what it's going to cost. That was 5 community meetings to have that conversation. We're good at that. We're good at this in New Jersey, but we could be a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to just to echo on what Leslie's saying, and I think at EDA we're trying to pivot in that direction again, where we haven't traditionally been so community-centered. Our approach now, even with all the governor and the lieutenant governor's incentives, are people and place-based first, right? And so even the new initiatives that we have, innovation challenges, 21st redevelopment challenges, this is putting our funding and our resources behind municipalities, asking them to bring on partners to the table so they can execute a plan. And so I think that's a different pivot for how we're all working, but it's influenced by everybody here at the table. I mean, the same thing's happening with us in the Department of Environmental Protection, where we gave $1 million, we're working with DEP, putting $1 million towards embedding individuals that are going to be brownfield representatives in communities that need it the most. So it's being very thoughtful about how you're entering communities, providing resources, because it's great for us to be there, but people need resources at the end of the day as well. So understanding what the true needs are and then offering them, providing them, and also technical assistance on the back end as well. But again, you have to be there every single step of the way. And I think for organizations like EDA and HMFA, we're pivoting in that direction again. And then also just having the community at the table. And I'm looking at Stacy right now. So you know that if Stacy is here and at the table, that she's helping to drive messages forward. And I think at EDA, NJRA, and DCA, actually all of our organizations, we're listening to all of our community partners out there. So it's not just the elected officials, but also those nonprofit organizations which are represented here today, from Citizen Action to the organization Stacey works for. So I think having our ear attuned to that work as well is helping to drive all of our policies into a really meaningful way that's impacting communities that need it the most.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can I just say one more thing on this?
Of course.
So the other piece that we see if you want community participation is you need strong, healthy, community-based organizations, which means you need to invest in them. So in the greater Newark area, yes. I mean, it's like not rocket science, right? It's like any if you want strong enterprises, you got to invest in them. So in the greater Newark area, we've invested in almost 150 community-based organizations that are out there hustling around housing and economic development for the residents. You need a strong community-based infrastructure if you want the community to have the power to participate.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to give you the last word on this, Lieutenant Governor. So, you mentioned in your earlier comments your focus on over 500 municipalities. Leslie talked about sort of who gets heard and who doesn't. And at the end of the day, New Jersey obviously has a ton of resources, but there are only so many. How do you think about prioritization amongst, the big eight that everyone talks about? Beyond that, how do you put it all together? Who gets what?
I think it starts with something that Leslie touched upon, leadership. And when she was describing that, it made me think about when I became the Speaker of the General Assembly. And I made a commitment that I was going to visit all 40 legislative districts. And I did. By doing that, I was able to, as a person who could set legislative priorities, I knew what communities were like. I knew the geography. I knew the empty stores. I knew the various cultural communities. I knew what communities were going into decline. And one of the things that I prioritized when I came to DCA was encouraging my staff to get out of 101 South Broad Street. And too often there are policymakers at the state level that are making decisions about appropriations and allocations, and they've never ever been in some of the communities they're making decisions about. So that has become very essential to me. Leslie said she didn't know she wanted to be OG. Well, I am OG in my ideology and in my philosophy. And I believe that government is for people.
Yep.
I don't believe that we have government just to be a self-perpetuating kind of an entity. And too often, government has shut people out. It really has. I come from a background nonprofit world as well. And I know how essential it is, as Maurice said, to have strong community organizations. I believe that we need to go back to some of the things we learned, for instance, out of the University of Chicago with the development of community organizing, George Brager. We have to go back to going into neighborhoods. In the town that I live in, the mayor has something called Mayor on the Block. Every week he's in a different neighborhood. He brings the public works with him. He brings the health department, everyone. In Newark, Mayor Baraka does something that is similar, and he goes into neighborhoods and they will shut streets down and teach children chess and that sort of thing. We have to get back to being people-centered and focused in our planning and in our policy. But it begins with leadership. And I'll close with this, Margaret. And one thing I have to give Governor Murphy his props for. He has really tried to build a diverse and inclusive government. Too often, you go in rooms, there are no women at the table. There are no Asian Americans at the table. There are no Latinos, Hispanics. No African Americans. And the other thing we must do at my level and at the governor's level, all of these state agencies and authorities that we have that make mega decisions about economic investment in our state. It's not just our agencies. Department of Transportation, you've got the Investment Council, State Investment Council. We have to make certain that there are diverse appointments made to these bodies, because often I know when I became Speaker, there was not one woman on the New Jersey Turnpike Authority. There was not one African American on the New Jersey Turnpike Authority. And we can go to many of our state agencies that are responsible for spending millions and millions and millions of dollars of state assets. So I think that's how we encourage the people participation. And then I said I was going to close, but I want to give a shout out to the public, to the private sector as well. I think Governor Murphy has set a tone and a trend, but we do not listen to small and medium-sized businesses in this state. It's always been, you know, who the Wall Street firms are, the publicly traded firms. The backbone of our economy are the small and medium-sized businesses. And even with development, we need to encourage and support emerging developers in our communities who want to make a commitment to doing projects in communities where they're needed. And often the bureaucracy is so intangible that they can't come to the table and do deals with state government. So I'm looking forward, Ty, to the reconfiguration of the Economic Development Authority, because I know that EDA is going to begin to place emphasis and focus on small and medium-sized businesses.
A shameless plug. And he's mentioned right now. So I mentioned Cristina Fuentes before, who's running our small business office, which we didn't have before. I think she's doing a phenomenal job. And we just started our small business lease assistance programs. And also, to Paul Seppi's credit, who runs this division, we have business development offices in North, South, and Central Jersey. Yes, it is all one state, but North, South, and Central Jersey, again, where they're reaching out to business owners where they are, offering opportunities, and then also created a program called Access, where again, you're reducing barriers to getting access to capital for small, women-owned, and minority businesses. So EDA is taking a lean into this direction. We recognize that there were issues. We recognize we have to do more. And I would say with Tim at the forefront, he really believes in this and is pushing us further. So really excited to work under him.
Fantastic. I'm going to pivot the topic just slightly. I know there are going to be some panels later on today that focus exclusively on opportunity zones, but given we have this pretty special crew here, I want to just start that discussion now. So I think we'll start with you, Lieutenant Governor. I'm not giving you much of a break. Tell us about the strategy from your level. What was New Jersey trying to accomplish with the zone selected, and give us your thoughts.
I think that in New Jersey, we are seeking to encourage investors and developers to come into neighborhoods and into communities that they have always been risk adverse to. I often describe that there is disposable income to be had in many communities, even those communities that you know, when the workup is done and business plans are developed, it is thought that they can't be profitable. That is absolutely not true. And I think that with what we've created with our 169 zones, we have sought to work with the investment and development community to demonstrate and support them going into areas that can really be transitioned. And you know, when Leslie was speaking of Bridgeton, I thought about Salem, New Jersey, which caught my attention very early in my tenure. It's way down in Cumberland County, and you know, New Jersey, unfortunately, you know, I always say the Raritan River seems to be the dividing line. You know, what's above the Raritan doesn't know what's below the Raritan. Salem is a very, very deprived community. There was a glass factory there that was the lifeline and the lifeblood of Salem City. It's now closed down. Jobs gone, mortgages going under, businesses shutting down. I think that Salem is ripe for that kind of development at all, that the opportunity zones are going to encourage. The other thing that I love about the zones that we have targeted, after Secretary of State Way finishes with the 2020 census, it is going to give us a lot of information in terms of who New Jersey is and where they are. It is going to have a great deal of implication for how we conduct business in New Jersey. We can go to enclaves. Let's think about Newark, for instance. For years and years, the Portuguese community has been in the ironbound of Newark, thriving, bustling commercial district. You can go into Elizabeth. There are other communities as well. The other thing I want to say on that point with the opportunity zones is, you know, everyone kind of lamented at an article that was written in the New York Times about 2 weeks ago, calling into question whether the zones were simply a boom for people to get tax breaks. Well, you know what? If you're going to get a tax break, but you're also making a contribution, which is social impact, then I think it's a fair deal all around. And we just have to make certain that loopholes that potentially exist do not keep the focus on the communities in our zones that we know we want to encourage people to come in. We're going to see shifting demographic patterns in the state. We're going to see a shift. First of all, New Jersey is one of the most educated populations in the country. We need to, take advantage of that. We know that the governor has now created a program where people who earn $65,000 a year or less can go to community colleges for free. We have to look at that type of data. Our investors need to begin to look at that type of data. Do not feel that these are down and out Debbie Downer communities. Right. These are communities that if you are willing to step forward, make some investment, you will find there is profit to be made, and you will be fulfilling what I believe all private sector folks should do. You should also participate in social responsibility.
Thank you. Yes. Maurice, I'm going to turn to you. Obviously, LISC has a long history, as you said in some of your earlier remarks, of investing capital into low-income communities, some of these same communities that are now opportunity zones. And I know George Ashton, who's leading some of the work for LISC, is here somewhere and is going to speak later. There he is. Hey, George. So what, as a OG in the space of investing capital in these communities,
I thought I was the GOAT.
What should we be excited about? And then Leslie, I'm going to ask you what we should be nervous about.
So look, there are $6 trillion of capital gains accumulated each year. $6 trillion. And for the most part, those gains have not been invested in the 69 opportunity zones in the state. What opportunity zones give us is a chance to market these 169 zones, census tracts, to an investor class that right now is on the sideline when it comes to most of these communities. And we should relish this opportunity. We should relish it, and we should be aggressive about it. We just announced 2 weeks ago with George and the Rockefeller Foundation that we're going to invest $400,000 to go into Newark and work with city government and the community to build a pipeline of investor-ready, shovel-ready projects for investors to come to, because that's what you need, right? At the end of the day, this is about how quickly we can get projects to that point that they're investment-ready and shovel-ready. We do that, the actual financial resources are there. So we should be excited that we've got a chance through what will, I think, end up being the largest federal incentive for community economic development yet in the history of the country. We should be excited to be aggressive about marketing our 169 communities here in New Jersey to an investor class that right now is on the sideline when it comes to these communities.
All right, so we've heard the upside. Leslie, what should we be nervous about?
I don't think we should be nervous about anything. We shouldn't be nervous because Maurice laid it out. There's money on the table. We just have to figure out how to go get it. So that's what we should be concerned about. The concern is that we're going to go with easy.
Yeah.
That's what we should be. If it's nervous is, we're going to go with easy. Again, I am an OG, so I'm kind of comfortable saying what needs to be said. It's more than Newark.
Yes.
Say it again.
It's more than Newark. And this is not to take anything away from Newark, but it's more than Newark. And if I'm nervous, I'm like, okay, thanks, Rockefeller, thanks, List, but help me get to those 75 municipalities around the state that have the designation. Because I know there are great projects there. What makes me nervous is sometimes our inability to get out of our own way. I'm an OG because you got to put your ego back, right? So if you're a nonprofit leader, if you're a municipal leader, this is not about you. This is about your community. This is about the people that live in your community that need a job. They need somewhere to live. They need community facilities. And as long as we walk into these meetings with investors and it's about us, we're losing. So I'm nervous about our preparedness, right? We see that Gov Prepare, where you're supposed to have a bottled water and the food in your basement in case it's another big storm, right? Well, what we need to be prepared for right now, I'm not concerned about what your role is. Get together and figure this out. Quickly. You're behind the 8 ball if you haven't done that already. I know through our work, can I say what I'm excited about though?
Yes.
I can, okay.
Leslie can say whatever she wants.
What I'm excited about is through the leadership of Governor Murphy and the Lieutenant Governor, and I'm gonna give kudos to Ty Cooper because at the time, she was in the governor's office, and remember I said influence and authority and relationship? She used that to get us all together in a room, using, I'm gonna shout him out again, Chris Wheeler, yes. You are a data genius. Because he leveled the playing field, took the politics out of who was getting a designation, and we did a great job, and every county has a designation. We started working, I guess it was 20 months ago, in a room on Fridays, seriously, Fridays at 10 o'clock. I did say to Ty, are you crazy? But Fridays at 10 o'clock, and we still meet every week, and we update one another on where we are, how we can bring our resources to the table to make a difference. But the challenge is, local level, no matter where you sit, let's get it together. Let's understand that all of the challenges before are not there. We have never, if we added up the years in community development work, it would be a lot. We've never seen anything like this. And there are gonna be naysayers, right? Rich people are gonna get richer off of this. There are going to be projects that we don't like, okay? But I'm not focused on that. Yeah, I'm focused on what I like. I'm sorry, Mayor Kelly, I'm just blowing you up right now. We're going to do that project in Bridgeton.
Yes, that's it.
Can I say what it is?
Yes.
It's the Smart Food Manufacturing Center in Bridgeton that's right next door to the Rutgers Food Innovation Center. What we found was that when these companies graduated from the Food Innovation Center.
We have capital. Call me.
See, look what I'm doing, Mayor Kelly. I'm doing it right now. It's related. Look there. I love you, sir. I love you. But so what the Food Innovation Center found was as people graduated, they were leaving New Jersey. Yeah. Impossible Burger started at the Food Innovation Center and left New Jersey because they couldn't, and it wasn't that they couldn't find the space, we couldn't put the resources together to make it work.
California.
Right, but California, New Jersey, same thing. But that's what we're using our resources for. If you're an investor in this room, Mayor Kelly, stand up again. This is a great project. Go help Mayor Kelly. But let me tell you what we did when we were down there, and I'm gonna be quiet right after this. We held the city accountable, the Cumberland County Improvement Authority, the Rutgers Innovation Center. We also said to them, you gotta put some skin in the game too. So understand that you have a role in this, and skin in the game is not always money.
That's right.
It's directing talent. Maurice started with talent. It's directing talent to run that manufacturing center. It's stepping up to the plate and investing in ourselves so that at the end of the day, when I went to the Food Innovation Center, there were people there that might not have had the educational credentials, but they had a family-sustaining job. Yep. And that's what this is all about. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want to live somewhere safe. We want to have enough money so that we can eat food and we can pay for our medicine, and we want to educate our children. And when we realize that we're the same and we're not different, that's how we get to the point that we need to be. I hope I didn't talk too long.
No,
but I
I'm
wanted to
excited.
leave that.
Margaret, a thought about within the zones and where government ought to seek to influence not only the type of development, but the location of the development.
Yeah.
So in many of your distressed areas, we ought to be helping or trying to help developers look at where there's an anchor institution.
Yep.
Or where there's an area within the zone that is on a precipice. And you want to build from that. And build from some security. Maurice talking about making ready an area. I think that's a critical role for government, is to have patient capital, make an area ready for development, to entice the development where we'd like it to be. HMFA put money aside several years ago to demolish buildings in Trenton. We're now discussing with the city changing that focus from merely a demolition program to a make ready for development program, and consolidate enough land that people who are looking to go into an opportunity zone and will bring capital to where we can work together and achieve the greatest response. I think that's one of the critical roles for government in making the opportunity zones work where it's the smartest for that to happen.
And Ty, you were obviously a real sort of stakeholder in getting everyone together.
Yeah.
How do we balance what Chuck is talking about and Maurice talked about, sort of the places where we're close and you just need that push and you need to get it ready, with, you know, maybe some of the 169 zones that are farther away from that readiness, and sort of wanting to obviously take advantage and get the capital into deals, but just be cognizant of the fact that the type of engagement and work in some communities may take longer.
So that's like the easiest Passover ever, and I love it. So shameless plug again. So EDA is doing our Opportunity Zone Challenge. The deadline for submittal is today at 4:30. John Costello is leading that initiative, but the point of that is to set aside a pot of money for counties, municipalities to work together with anchor partners to produce an investment prospectus or produce a plan. So we're putting resources behind cities and counties and really encouraging them to work together. So there's regional development happening across the board. So that's easy, low-hanging fruit. But more than that, and I think we've kind of talked about it or touched on it earlier, is really this interagency approach that we've taken. So when we launched Opportunity Zones, the governor was fantastic in ensuring that we had the best zones. We were in there, you know, right out the gate with the new administration, with the lieutenant governor, with our governor, getting our zones in by the deadline. After that, it's like, what do you do now? As a state, we have combined every single resource that we have within all of our departments to ensure that we're putting resources behind opportunity zones. So for HMFA, with the low-income housing tax credit, there's additional points if you're building and developing in these opportunity zones. And so that helps everyone from your Newark to your Perth Amboy to your Plainfield. If it's in an opportunity zone, there's additional benefits that are provided there. And that's with all of the incentives, including the new incentives from Forward and Aspire that we have that are being pushed through and supporting opportunity zones. And so I think as a state, we're really cognizant about making New Jersey first in class when it comes to opportunity zones, and then also making sure that we're leveraging every resource that we have, every technical assistance capacity that we have with DCA and their amazing office under Sean Thompson with Local Government Services, which is going out into communities. So as a team, NJRA, HMFA, DCA, and EDA have been going out into every single community. So whether it's Flemington and South Jersey or whether it's going all the way up to Hudson County, we've been touching every single county and every single municipality to make sure that, you know what, if they aren't quite prepared now, what do we have to do to get them to that final point? And not just that, I want to just say opportunity zones are great, but they aren't the panacea, right?
No.
At the end of the day, what's important for municipalities to know is that as state agencies, we can provide them with so many more resources beyond this 10 years, right? So if at the end of the day, the goal is to make sure that these are sustainable communities, they can do this with us, and we're glad to have the leverage of opportunity zones. But as a state, like, we are here to help in every capacity possible. And I also want to make sure I shout out Evan Weiss. I'm not sure if he's here yet. Evan Weiss is going to also be on the panel with George Ashton and a dynamic group of folks that we have talking about OZs, but has really been doing this work nationwide. So we're glad to have him in the state leading this. But again, I think we have been really hands-on. The reason that this state has gotten so much attention nationwide is because we do have a really good ground game. We have a really good ground game where we're touching communities where they need to be touched, providing resources wherever we can. And again, offering challenges like the Opportunity Zone Challenge is great. You should have partnered with us on that one, Maurice, just saying. But,
There's still time.
There's still time. We could do. I'm looking at Maurice right now.
Let me give Maurice a chance to get in a word.
I'm trying to stay out of trouble over here. So there are at least two risks we should worry about. One is what we've been talking about, which is that you have all of the money, so to speak, go to just a few places. Sure. This is a risk nationally. It's a risk in the state of New Jersey. The other risk alludes to something that we were talking about, which is how do you ensure community participation in the choice of the projects, right? And so in all 169 zones in the 75 municipalities, we need the localities focused on how they're going to bring the community into the game of selecting where investment should go. Just like any other investment, you need community participation there too. And this is an overwhelmingly biased toward investor incentive. Sure. So you got to work extra hard here. There are no guardrails required. You've got to actually do that by being aggressive at the local level.
And let's flesh that out some. Is that the responsibility of the local municipality, of the investor community, of the fund manager?
So I would say all of the above.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I agree.
I know from LISC perspective, for example, we're not going to work with an investor that doesn't want the community at the table. That's just going to be part, if you want our capital with you, that's going to be part of what we insist on as a requirement. And I think investors who really want this to benefit the community as well as a financial return should also do the same thing.
And so obviously you run a large mission-driven organization. I have the benefit of running a mission-driven investing business. What is your responsibility, my responsibility, our responsibility for the investment capital that would certainly come into the space that just mission isn't their thing? It's not their mission, it's not their foundation. How do we educate those investors?
Yeah. So, and then I'm going to let somebody else jump in here. I've seen a number of things being done. One is I've actually seen additional incentives that people are putting on the table for the kinds of investments to benefit the communities that we want. I've also seen local government coming together and aligning their tools to make sure that their tools are incenting the kind of behavior and investments we want and in the places that we want them. So I think there are lots of things. You can also require more data, that we don't have data required on this thing at the federal level. That does not mean that you can't do it in exchange for local incentives. So I think the tools are there, but you've got to be aggressive at the local level to make sure that you get the results you want.
Awesome. I had to do a time check. We have 5 minutes left, so I just want to give everyone a last word, starting with Leslie, just what everyone in this room can do to push New Jersey forward today. 1 minute. For each
Wow, did she say 1 minute? I think we have a responsibility to be leaders. And we have to recognize and understand that there are people that will never be in this room that are counting on us to think about them when we're in this room. It's not money, it's philosophy, it's character, and it's integrity. And if you're in this room and there are people who are counting on you to make the right decision that impacts their life, then you always have to be responsible to that, and you can't forget that that's why you're here.
Chuck?
And
I heard that little clap too.
I'm guilty of this, I'm sure as many others are. We need to look beyond the moment. This deal, this day, spend more time looking at what do we want to see New Jersey be 5 years out and 10 years out and 20 years out and plan accordingly. How do we grow that? How do we grow for our children's children? That's what, to me, the most important thing, to create an environment where we can marshal the private sector to make the investments that have to happen. State government's never going to be able to pay for it all. Right. Our incentive programs don't do it. So how do we create a vision and a future to bring that investment that may have fled New Jersey back to our state?
Yeah, that's great. The Lieutenant Governor was actually challenging me just a few minutes ago. I'm looking forward and thinking 20 years out.
And that is what I'm going to touch upon. I think for everyone in this room, we need to begin to collectively encourage from the municipal level up to the county level, and certainly at our level at the state and then at the federal level. We have got to stop this. For instance, in New Jersey, it always boils down to what happens in June when it is time for us to pass and adopt a budget. We have to get beyond that type of financial planning in our state. We have to begin to, maybe we can't appropriate all we want in one given budget year. Let us collectively, legislature, administration, let's begin to make some policy decisions. You know, and the reason I feel that way, I'm going to just share a little anecdote. When I worked in county government, I used to converse with a man who was in his 80s. He had come to work in county government during the Work Progress administration. Mm-hmm. So he listened, he came through several presidents, governors, etc. And he used to come in my office and tell me about 1930 up to the present. But he concluded with this one day. He said to me, honey, I seen them come and I seen them go. And so my challenge to everyone in this room is to understand exactly what Leslie said. It's not about us. It's about generations of people who will be affected by the decisions that we make today. So let's be good stewards of whatever it is we are responsible for now, so that successive generations can build upon what we have developed.
Thank you. Maurice?
So I would just add that, and I think you can look at your own life to sort of confirm this, the most important assets of opportunity are local.
Yeah.
Local assets are the ones that matter the most in helping folks achieve the American dream. If that's true, if you believe that, then it's focusing on maximizing the power of local assets. That's the key to unlocking a resilient, a growing, and an inclusive New Jersey. I'll add one other thing. We've got to be honest about race and culture and the role that they've played in getting us to where we are. Yeah. We will not get out of this if we're not intentional about that fact as well. And a lot of places don't grapple with this well. And so those two things for me are two that I would just leave with us to wrestle with.
Ty, the final word.
Right, so I'll be really, really quick, and I'm just going to copy off the Lieutenant Governor and her love for Shirley Chisholm. One, we're all in this because we love being able to serve the public. So for us, just remembering that service is the rent we pay for the privilege of living on this earth, and the fact that we get to do this job day in and day out is critically important. And again, I'll finish where I started by the most critical thing that we're going to do is invest in people and invest in communities.
Thank you so much. It's an excellent thing.